Hello and welcome to Sensei Podcast. This is Manos Brilakis discussing with leaders in the field of CTO and complex PCI. Sensei means teacher or master in Japanese. The goal of the Sensei Podcast is to help you learn and improve in CTO and complex PCI so that you can become the best that you can be and offer your patients the best possible results. Well, good morning and welcome everyone to Sensei Podcast. It is my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Khaldoon Alaswad from Hereford Hospital. Khal, good morning.
Good morning.
And thanks for joining us. Again, this is one of the first Sensei podcasts, and the whole goal here is to learn how to do complex PCI, and I couldn't think of anyone better than Dr. Alaswad, who has been on this for several years now. So,
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Khal. Again, I mean, you've done a phenomenal work on this, teaching around the globe. But how did this all start? How did you decide to become a complex operator?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I like this is a really good question, and honestly, I just responded to my patient's needs. That's what I was kind of thinking. Why do I do complex PCI, and why did I pick this? And honestly, taking care of patient, especially when you're deeply involved with the patient, and when you listen to your patient, and you can treat them if they have type A and B lesions, but a lot of patients actually get denied treatment and get denied bypass surgery for some reason, and that body of patients is growing and growing and growing. So early in 2005, 2006. I was fascinated by PCIs and the possibility of what to do with PCIs. And of course, you always need to do the right thing by your patient. So the advent of a drug-eluting stent made it possible to have results that durable. But the problem that we discovered early that drug-eluting stent, although durable, but you have to optimize the results, and we start facing more and more complex patients. So pretty much because I wanted to help my patients who have no other option, that's how I started doing complex PCI. And I started first with a complex PCI because at my generation, interventional cardiologist, CTO was kind of no. There was no really good way to open it. We had the CrossFit 200 wire, and then came the Miracle wires, and I tried them a couple of times. It didn't work. And so, but then we start kind of listening to our Japanese colleagues, and it's a funny story. In 2006, I was in a different hospital. 2007, I think it was around. Yeah. So OGI comes to some of the doctors bring them to Proctor. It's like they went. So they got invited to the dinner the night before. So I listened to Ochi speaking, and he showed several cases, retrograde. And the next day I was busy, so I couldn't watch what he's doing in the cath lab. I'll try to go in, and there was like so many people in the control room. I couldn't get even close enough to see what he's doing. And the comments after that were funny. The people, like even the people who were watching so closely, didn't understand what he's doing either. So which is really funny.
Didn't help much.
Like even the people who work with him. So, but his lecture was really inspirational to me. And 1 week later, I faced a patient with an RCS CTO and no other options. I actually went retrograde through an epicardial collaterals from the CIRC to the RCA. I think I might have used over-the-wire balloon or fine cross. I can't remember. And the patient developed ischemia, so I stopped. And to start a CTO or a complex PCI, you really need a supportive environment. And you cannot really start it if the political environment, the administrations, your partners, your colleagues are not supportive. Unfortunately, I kind of moved on from that place, and I moved to more supportive environment where people really genuinely trying to help patients. And what happened, we had large percentage of those patients have these complex PCI, have CTOs, and I kind of grown into it organically, trying to help those patients. I hope that answered the question. I'm not sure I can.
Yeah, no, this is great. Actually, it's a journey, right? It didn't happen overnight. I mean, there's a need, and always the patient comes first, right? You want to have the patient to do the right thing for the patient, and then
Yeah.
you have to have the tools to do it, and that's when you learn all these techniques. So you
Yeah.
had this experience with Dr. Uchiai. That was one of the early things. Then who else helped you later on get your skills advanced and grow and learn the very complex things you are doing right now?
So honestly, the learning process was it's tremendous. Like, you have at your fingertips so many things. You can watch people in the live courses, and now we have videos, and we have even, and sometimes, although I don't like that, but sometimes even you pick up hanging out at the bar after the meeting, you pick up so many tricks and techniques from colleagues talking to. And it's just being in the right place in the right time, and being open for learning and listening to people, and kind of being curious. How did you solve that problem? What did you do when you faced with this situation? And I was really fortunate to kind of get introduced to Bill Lombardi and Erin Grantham early in my career. I was 5 years out of my training, and I was trying to kind of learn CTO. And these are the two guys who kind of helped me the most. And after that, it became basically, you became part of community, and it's kind of open, and we all talk to each other, and we run things. So everybody became everybody's mentor. There is no a single mentor. Like, I discovered new things. I taught people, but I learned more, of course, from other people. And each one of us brought something to the table. And there was that passion about creating a momentum and creating a movement about solving patients' problems and making PCI really better and better. And that passion, it was kind of permeated through this group of people. But the first people, really, it was Bill Lombardi and Erin Grantham. Erin came to proctor me the first Crossboss and the Stingray cases. And we went to dinner the night before. He came to Appleton, Wisconsin. It's kind of a small town, but it's a beautiful town. And went to dinner. And Erin was so warm and so friendly and so nice. He made me comfortable with this. I felt immediately kind of affinity to become part of this group of innovators and frontierish people who are trying to really crack the nut of the last frontier in PCI, which back then we all agreed, and still now actually CTO PCI.
Perfect. I think you've done the same thing. I think many people you've taught already. So you, I guess, passed the torch and did the same thing for the generation that came afterwards. But now you are obviously very established, very senior, can do very complex cases. How do you prepare for these cases? Do you still do the same preparation you were doing before? Do you do something special? How long do you spend? How do you prepare for these very complex cases that you do?
That's a good question. So, and that was actually a learning process for me. I'm kind of person, if I decide to drive from New York City to California, I get in a car first and then plan the trip. And that's this is how I did it. This is not a way to do PCI. Honestly, it's first of all, I establish a rapport with the patient. Like, you have to meet the patient. You have to understand what the patient wants and needs. You have to make sure that the patient understands what they are getting themselves into. And once you establish that, it becomes like you become incumbent on you to solve the patient problem. Okay, you can't look at the anatomy and say, no, we can't treat you. You need to go medical therapy. But if there is a clinical indication, you need to basically go. And we all talk about it. Manos, you talk about it, and I talk about it, and we taught a lot of people. You really have to know every detail about your patient, not only the angiogram. Of course, the angiogram is very, very important, but you need to know you really have to have a deep knowledge of your patient. You can't be just a plumber or a proceduralist who basically don't know. You need to know everything, the comorbidities of your patient, with your patient hemodynamic status, what their EF, what their cardiovascular status, what their medications. And then you really need to kind of know their coronary angiogram. And you need, I advise everybody to review every coronary angiogram they can get their hand on that the patient. A lot of times you and I, Manos, we get patients, they've had 6, 7, or 8 angiograms before, and it's not enough to review the last one, because you need to review the one before they got the CABG and see what their arteries looked before they had CABG, because things are changing. And once you review the angiogram, and you need to kind of ask yourself, do I have the skill set, and do I have not only my skill set psychologically and emotionally, and also the environment around you? Is my cath lab ready for this? Are the people helping me at the table know this? Is the administrator in the hospital understand what we're doing? Are my partners in the hospital, are my colleagues in the hospital understand the need to this? And so once you ask these questions and you approach this each case with complete thoughtfulness, the most important thing, I don't go to treat a patient like half-hearted. Either you go in or you don't go. And you prepare to win every time. And if you don't prepare, failing to prepare and preparing to fail. So always prepare. And these things become a muscle memory afterward. But if you're starting, you have to think seriously about doing that thing. But after that, to become a muscle memory, you can do that every time. When you look at the angiogram, you look at critically, and you'll discover a lot of new things.
Perfect. And then you mentioned before that, you've learned a lot, but you still keep on learning. So how do you still learn now? Is it through meetings, through the discussions you mentioned afterwards? Now you know so much, but there are still things to learn. How do you keep up and expand what you do?
So this is our knowledge base is actually like a funnel, but it's upside down, right? So the base is here, up. And the more you get up, the more you discover that you don't know, right? So when you are at the bottom of that funnel, you think you know everything. But and you keep discovering that you really don't know. And I had that angst, and that actually kind of wrecked my life. I always thought I need to know everything. And I thought, not knowing everything in the knowledge base we have to collect is a big deficit. And I still have that. I still have that feeling, the imposter syndrome. I don't know all the clinical trials. I don't know all the studies there. I don't know all the techniques. I discovered it's a process. It's a kind of iterative process, right? I discovered if you keep your mind open for learning, the knowledge is out there at your fingertips. So I learned from videos, I learned from conversations, I learned from meetings, I learned from the fellows. I am in an environment where we have fellows presenting 2 or 3 times a week. We have lectures. So I sit down with the fellows, I learn from them. And so you have to remember that there is not a single person can have all knowledge. And you have to be humble and admit to yourself that I really cannot know everything, but I need to do something to keep close to the knowledge. And this is what we call the dialectic of knowledge. The more you know, the more you discover you don't know. But that actually helps you move forward, and you continue to exchange with other people. So you also the knowledge that comes to you also comes through you to others. And if you keep just your mind open, you'll be there. You'll be good all the time.
Perfect. Now, do you get nervous? I know you do some very crazy, should I say, some very complex case that many people have turned down, super low EF, multiple CTOs, etc. So very sick patients, high risk. Do you get nervous? Do you get anxious? How do you deal with cases when you do cases?
Nervous. I hate to be a kind of cavalier and say I really don't get nervous. I really deal. I think if I get nervous, I am really hiding it really good, even from my own self. The most important thing for me is always the patient knowledge. If the patient understands the risk, and I don't exaggerate, but I don't underplay the risk, I always kind of tell the patient what I think the exact risk is. And if the patient understands it and there is a clinical indication and I am really well prepared, I really don't get nervous. And um, I think probably I get nervous if I didn't know uh, um, everything about the patient, and in that situation, I actually stop. I temporize the patient. If it's an acute thing, I'll do everything in my uh, abilities to basically obtain more information. And if I can't get all the answers, I basically stage things, and that comes with experience. Probably early on, I probably get nervous, but nowadays I don't feel I get nervous.
And then, are there any cases that stand out to your memory that really taught you a lot or were stressful, or are there any cases that shaped the way you practice?
Yes. So most of the time, I remember the cases that didn't go well. Yeah, it's like there are things, there are cases that comes along sometimes, and you discover, yes, like all of a sudden you discover there is a way to treat this patient. Like, and I love the patients who have very low EF and have been turned down by surgeons and turned down by every other operator. And those are the patient which is I basically enjoy treating. And I'm fortunate enough to get a lot of those patients who basically get sent to us here. And those are the patients I learn the most from. And basically those patients who I prepare the most for, because I get my colleagues involved, we get the heart failure doctors, we get the surgeons involved, the fellows, I discuss with the fellows, I discuss with the patient and the families, and we get things ready for them. And these are the patients which basically can open a new frontier and open a new possibilities for patients. These are the patients we really learn from. So these are kind of the cases that shaped my career. There are bad cases, of course, and you can't forget them. And you discover sometimes complication nobody else discovered before. And these cases also shaped my the way I approach patients, and it made me basically think, regardless of my knowledge base and my experience, you always have to be prepared for the unknown. And the unknown, the problem, you don't know what's that unknown, and you have to be prepared for it, and you have to be able to kind of react at the short notice to it.
Perfect. Now, you taught many fellows, many complex fellows, CTO fellows, CHIP fellows. Some of them have become actually expert operators on their own. But what makes you excited about the student? How do you recruit some? How do you tell this person is going to do well, how some person is not going to do very well?
So curiosity in the students is very, very important. Like, I think our branch of medicine, we are a proceduralist. We are also have we need a lot of very large knowledge base. So we are kind of the demand on us really big. I like students, who have a grit and they are very curious. And the things which is I haven't really answered, like how do I distinguish those talented or those and not really talented? Now, you can teach everybody to be probably Yo-Yo Ma, right? Violinist. But it might take 40 years for someone and someone for take 3 years. So I want to know who's like basically is so easy, like who has the talent. And this talent is basically, I'm not sure I'm not like it's similar to protege musicians. So those who have, once I start watching my students working, those who get it, like they basically get the mechanics of the procedure and they understand the physics of it and the 3D spatial imagination. That also gets me very excited about the students. So the two things I want in my students: curiosity and talent in the technical skills. Because if you're curious, you always learn about your patient, you learn about new information, you learn about the new procedures. So that's very important. But that's not enough to become a good intervention cardiologist. You have to have the innate talent to do it. If you're not talented enough, it's going to be, your life is going to be hard if you're an interventional cardiologist, or you gravitate toward doing like simple cases, which is nothing wrong with that, but you cannot be a complex PCI operator.
Perfect. And then how many cases does it take? I know you train people, you do several hundred cases a year. How many cases does it take for someone to become good? Now, there are different levels of good, but what is the learning curve? Is it 50 cases enough, 100? I mean, what do you think?
So the more, the better. However, there are different levels of people. There are people that take them 3 procedures to master a procedure, and there are people who need 15 times to master a procedure, and there are people who need 50 times to master a procedure. And that's where kind of goes back to our previous discussion about the talent. So on an average, you need to do a 50 CTO PCIs a year to basically keep your skills. But to be really great, you need to keep probably doing as much as you can. And the reason is, like, even the talented people, they could lose that skill if they don't practice. The practice makes perfect. And if you keep your curiosity and you keep the attitude, like, I have to be success, not at all cost, but I refuse defeat. I refuse that to admit that there's anything impossible. If there is a problem, and I find a solution for it. And if you adopt that mindset, you're going to continue to progress and move forward. The minute it becomes about you as an operator, not about the patient, the minute you're going to become basically your skill set, your level of expertise is going to freeze in that, and you're going to become down and down and down, and the people are going to pass you. I think just be humility to learning a new thing, be curious, and do not accept defeat. Just keep looking for solution for your patient's problem, and keep practicing. The bigger the volume, the better the skill set.
Absolutely. I mean, nothing like practice for everything, including complex PCI. How about the live cases? I know you do many demonstrations and many different meetings, and that's obviously a stressful experience for the operator to some extent, but can be a valuable learning tool. What are your thoughts? Do you believe live case demonstrations are essential for people to learn and get better? What do you think about that?
So the live case is, I think it serves as an inspiration to a lot of people. And the live cases normally are kind of witnessed by hundreds, sometimes thousands of people. And each one of those students will learn something different from this live case. I think live cases are important because they provide inspiration, and because they provide competition too. So if you are watching your colleague in, let's say in Los Angeles, one of our colleagues is doing really great things during a live case, you're going to go back to your home, you're going to try to see, how do I get there? So live cases are, I think, really important to teach people about new techniques and new possibilities. Sometimes teach people what not to do, and sometimes teach people what they can do, because the people, they could look at the live case and say, I don't want to do that, and which is perfectly fine. And in addition, also, put the pressure on us as a community. Look what Manos did in his live case. That looks great. I want to be like Manos. So, and this is, I think live cases are here to stay, and they're going to continue to be a very important part of our education process.
I like that. I think inspiration, you're right. I think captures a big part of it, helps you get motivated and want to do it yourself. So you're absolutely right on that. But yourself, so again, you do many cases, a lot of cases. And that's a lot of stress, right? Both psychologically, mentally, but also physically. I mean, that's a lot of lead wearing. I know you have some systems. So what keeps you going? What keeps you in good shape? How can you be doing this very demanding kind of work?
Honestly, it's my family support. It's like my wife, she's the one who basically, my therapist, my support system. When I'm defeated, she's the one who lifts me up. When I'm successful, she celebrates with me. She understands. I'm very fortunate. It's like I am probably the luckiest man alive to have my wife. You have to exercise as an interventional cardiologist to keep with the demand of our profession. You really have to be in shape. It's really kind of a sport. You have to make sure that your core muscles are strong, and because fatigue, if you fatigue easy, you actually start making mistakes during the procedure. So you have to keep in mind that exercise is very important for you. And that's why I like athletes, the people who come into our profession from, if they've been an athlete, because I know they have a grit, I know they have an endurance, and I know they are fit for the demand of these cases. And so I think working out is very, very important for the interventional cardiologist, but also you have to have some support system. My support system is at home with my wife, and friends could be support. We actually support each other, Manos, right? We kind of talk to each other about things, but you need daily support system. And if you really have a stress at home, if you have a stress at your work, yeah, you can't really do this work. So you need some support system. You need some escape.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. I mean, family is huge for these things, and especially when the things don't go as well as you could like them to go. And then people, I mean, it can be very depressing at sometimes, at least for me as well. Yeah. So you exercise, you have your family, your wife supports you. Anything else? Do you read any specific books or any music? Anything else that keeps you going?
Okay. So lately, I always wanted to learn how to fly airplanes, and I postponed this dream for a long time until basically I'm not sure it's fortunate or unfortunate. December 2019, I decided to go and take a lesson, and of course, COVID was the next year, so I had a lot of time on my hands, so I became a pilot. So I'm a private pilot now. I think that's actually, I love that because it's challenging, but also entertaining. It's challenging mentally and physically and emotionally. It's similar to interventional cardiology, and you learn a lot from it. So this is basically my kind of pastime. I fly airplanes. I like to fly, and I read a lot in politics and history. I am deeply involved in a pro-democracy movement overseas, not in the U.S., because, as you know, I'm originally from Syria. It's a country suffering from lack of democracy and freedom and basic human rights. So that basically, actually, that gives me a purpose in life. And that makes me always think life is bigger than me, and it's bigger than interventional cardiology and bigger than medicine, because I always involved in other people's really major suffering. I've seen a lot. I've been so many refugee camps and medical missions where that kind of keeps me going, because I realize how small I am in this world, but I also realize that whatever I do, going to have some impact.
No, and actually, I know that you've done a lot of charity work in Syria and otherwise, and helped many people. And I think that, as you say, it gives you more meaning and grounds you down to real life. What are the things that you are most proud of?
Of course, I'm very proud of my kids. That's actually this is this is personal. I am very proud of my father. I am his only child, and my father was a man of principle. And there are people I meet now 25 years after his death. They tell me, your dad was an amazing man. He was very brave. He stood up for the common man. He was actually a judge, and he butted head with the secret police of Syria trying to protect the people. So these are, on a personal level, my kids have been widely successful, and my son is a big lawyer in LA. My daughter is a doctor. My youngest son, he's amazingly smart, and he probably the smartest member of our family, and he's a great. And I'm very proud of my family, basically. On a personal achievement, I'm proud of being an interventional cardiologist. I think this gives me a lot of satisfaction and meaning in my life, and I'm proud also of my work in human rights organizations through my life. Actually, I've been involved in that. I don't talk about it, but you give me the opportunity. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. There's always big things both inside and outside medicine. Sometimes we get too cocooned into our, medical words in the cath lab and forget that there's world outside there. So it's very important to remember that cath lab is a very small part of the world, after all.
Yes, absolutely.
And then, what are your plans for the future? Are you going to be doing CTO PCI for the next 50 years?
Lately, I actually was in private practice until 2014, and I am really finally, after 8 years of being in academia and teaching fellows. I used to proctor a lot of doctors in practice before I came. Now I am proctoring doctors and also teaching fellows, and I think this is our legacy, you and I, Manos. So I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing and teaching fellows and teaching doctors and learning from fellows and doctors as long as I can do it physically. And it's hard on the body, and there are a lot of other considerations. I'm finding meanings in teaching a lot of fellows and doctors what I do, and advancing research and always having questions to answer, and seeing the process of how you build the clinical trials. How do you get to answer certain questions? And so I'm planning to do it as long as I can. Of course, there are also financial considerations. I didn't come from really a very wealthy background, so I have to work to kind of support myself and support my family, and I'm supporting other people too. That's a really good question, and I always ask myself how long I can do this. If I can't do interventional cardiology, at least I can continue to do my research and teaching and growing the next generation of cardiologists and doctors.
Perfect. So what is the advice from you to them? So the people who are listening to this, the people who want to become, complex operators or interventionalists or CTO operators. So what's your advice to them? What should they do to get to be good and achieve their potential?
First, they have to be honest with themselves. Is this for them? It's not really for the faint of heart. although the faint of heart couldn't do it, right? And people are faint of heart in interventional cardiology. They could be much better in other, even more difficult than interventional cardiology. First and foremost, be honest with yourself. Do you really want to do this? Because it's hard, and it's hard on your family, and it's hard on your body, and it's hard on your psyche. And if you're really not willing to do the hard part, you're going to continue to be mediocre in interventional cardiologist, and you're going to do kind of complex PCI and all that stuff. You're not going to be able to do it. You can do the bread and butter, but you have to be really honest with yourself. I think cardiology is a great field, and I've done my first research. I did a research year in a preventive cardiology, and I loved it. And I was going to become actually a preventive cardiologist. And I loved heart failure. I wanted to be heart transplant cardiologist. And I loved EP. I loved all these fields. You can be great. If you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. But also you have to be honest with yourself. Is my environment, is my support at home? Do I have the time to be able to do complex CTO, PCI, and complex chip procedures? They have a lot of demand on you. So that's the first thing. If you answer yes, I have what it takes to do it, then you need to put principles. First of all, always be open to learning. And second, one advice I got actually from Aaron Grantham, he told me the day he came to proctor me in 2010, I think, 2010, the day he came, he said, we decided that not to say no based on anatomy. We only say no if the patient doesn't need the procedure. But if the patient needs the procedure, I'm going to find a solution for it. And a solution, not that necessarily you do the procedure. You bring someone else to help you do the procedure. You send the patient somewhere else, and you go with the patient to watch someone else solve the problem. So be honest with yourself. And when you're honest with yourself, be professionally and scientifically honest. If the patient need the procedure clinically, you're going to have to find a solution for it. And if you can't find it, you're going to have to seek help for someone to find it.
Perfect. And then it is a long way to success, but clearly you've gone a long way and you've done amazing work for many fellows. And I'm with you that teaching new fellows, new generation is important. Now, there are not that many complex operators right now, right? And there's still a need for more complex operators. Are there any ways you think that can encourage people, young people, to go into this area and do more training in complex and CTO, which, as you said, is not an easy career path, but it can be very rewarding. How can we get more people, especially women? There's less women right now in our chip CTO field. So any thoughts on how to get more people to be excited about this?
That's a very important question, because we really have more disease than enough operators to treat. And when society kind of grows older and older, the coronary artery disease become more complex. And we really have to kind of work at three kind of levels. First, we're going to continue to develop the skill sets and the techniques. Third, we need a technology development that actually complement the skill sets and the techniques and makes it easier and makes the success more predictable. But more importantly, we really need to be scientific. And I kind of believe in this. We need to make sure that what we do is grounded in science and randomized clinical trials. And we're going to continue to lose really good operators that are going to pick different fields if we don't provide them with excitement about what they do. Because if everybody telling the cardiology fellows, well, there is no need for revascularization because it did not really do anything other, and even improvement the quality of life, I don't think it's good enough, right? Because people kind of curtail their activities, we need to kind of show value of what we do. And it's the onus is on us to kind of demonstrate the value of what we do. Now we are in a catch kind of 22. We don't have enough operators to do a clinical trials that show benefit, but we need a clinical trial to show benefit to attract more operators. So we're going to have to continue work on that and solve it and find a solution. And you led the way, Manos, like you're doing a lot of research and clinical trials, but I don't think we're going to be easy. We're going to be keep like kind of easily to attract other people to adopt our point of view without showing some evidence base.
Yeah, no, thanks, Khaled. Actually, you have been instrumental in several trials you are doing, NASA, the studies on previous bypass patients, and many things that you are doing already, along with the teaching of the fellows that come a long way towards that.
Yeah.
So again, thank you so much. I mean, it's been phenomenal talking to you and learn a lot from you. I think our audience will learn a lot of this as well. And again, I'm super excited, super blessed to be able to work with you over more than 10 years now. I think it's been crazy. You still talk to me, which is surprising, but again, it's been wonderful. Thanks so much for this morning. Thanks for everything you've done for the field. And, on behalf of your future fellows, I'm very excited that you're doing that. And just to mention to people that actually Carl is leading the effort to standardize the CHIP CTO training program and have it separate the same timings in all programs, so everyone is easier to match and find their program. So again, thanks on that from Carl as well, because that's been phenomenal, and I think it's made the life easier for the people who want to do this.
Thanks, Manos. I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of speak about these really kind of sometimes emotional stuff, and sometimes it's good to talk outside the technical medicine and the clinical trials and the p-values.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Carl.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Sensei podcast.